interview.
My guest is Ipeleng Mabusela, CEO of the retail motor industry. Sorry, there's a friend of mine. His name is Kuni, and I get messages from him, and he knows I love him, and he knows that he loves me too. But we like to act like we don't like each other.
Yeah.
Kuni, you sent me a message 6 minutes after the hour to complain that I didn't mention a particular story when you could have called in. Sure. It was an open line, Kuni. Yeah? You could have called in and talked about your understanding or your angle with regards to the so-called peace deal in Palestine. Let me read you very quickly what Kuni says. He says, yet more biased reporting from AMS. I don't report. I discuss.
Yeah.
Hamas executes Palestinian civilians. No mention from EWN or Aubrey. Just a skeptical mention on the peace deal. One almost gets the idea they are not happy about the peace deal, and that it's ultimately not about peace, but more about who brokered it. I don't think that it's a peace, by the way, Kuni, and I've said that. But here's the problem. You've got to call in. It's an open line. I can't think for you.
Hey.
And I'd love to hear your voice.
True.
Kuni. You can't 6 minutes after the hour say, oh, you didn't talk about the subject that I wanted to talk about or hear about. I'm not here to represent your opinions. I'm here to represent mine. So please, Kuni, next time when it's an open line and there is a particular thing that you would like to talk about, please talk about it. Yeah? So please, because I'm dying to hear your angle. I really would have wanted to hear what your angle is.
Yeah.
I'm clear about my opinion about the thing. I think it's not going to last, that so-called peace. Mm-hmm. Secondly, I think that Donald Trump he is Donald Trump.
Sure.
So I have very clear opinions about this, and I've mentioned them. But please don't run and hide behind this constant victimhood, Kuni. Call in and be part of the conversation, or don't say anything at all. 17 minutes after 9. Ipeleng Mabusela is my guest, CEO of the retail motor industry, and I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with him. But Ipeleng, thank you, my brother, for coming to join us. I really appreciate you coming to studio. It's a Friday night. Folks are Friday, and here you are on the Aubrey Masango show. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for coming. What is the RMI? We hear about it all the time.
Robs, thanks for having me, and good evening to your listeners. As for Friday nights, I said to my wife, it's one Friday out of 52 out of your lifetime that maybe you get to talk about something meaningful.
Sure.
That people might want to hear about. So thanks
Sure.
for having me. RMI stands for Retail Motor Industry Organization, actually. And what it really is it represents more than 8,000 plus small to medium businesses, some corporates as well, in the automotive aftermarket. And ours is to look after their interests. We've got two halves, a trade association, which looks after policy interests, business interests, some of the issues they have. They have some basic issues that I'll talk about a bit later. And also, of course, employer relations issues. So we're an employers association, which means we negotiate with labor unions for a living. Wage negotiations. We just closed one.
So you're like an employer union?
Exactly that.
Really? Huh?
Exactly that. Yeah. So that's the one half of it. The other half, like I said, is more trade. And if you really think about what the automotive aftermarket is, the piece that we look after, the automotive sector, I'd say, has got two halves. There's what's called upstream, everything that's required to make a car, and there's what's called downstream, everything that happens once a car is made. So to explain simply, people make South 32 makes alumina. That alumina is then converted to aluminium. And then somebody makes a rim out of it that goes into your BMW or Mercedes. That's called a tier 1 supplier who supplies an OEM like BMW or Mercedes. Now, once those lovely colleagues make a vehicle, everything after that, from the time a car is born until it dies, is the aftermarket. So that's a dealership buying cars, selling cars. That is fuel stations we look after. So whatever goes into your car. Lately, we're doing gas conversions. It's everything that covers buying parts, your Midases, all of those. Those are some of our member businesses, parts and equipment. It's some engines can get remanufactured. It's the workshops that you see in the aftermarket.
When you say
and all of
look after, what does that actually mean? Does that mean that you, set policy and standards for the manufacturing, the selling, the keeping of certain things in the market that are bought and sold by various people? What does that mean?
So when you say look after, it means we set a standard that says if you want to fix cars and bear this RMI logo that you see, there's a certain standard that you need to have on health and safety, on having qualified people, on the way you treat your customers, on fair pricing.
Right.
And that's why customers, consumers like me and you can trust the brand. And that's why insurance companies can trust the brand. That's why, for example, your fleet companies like Avis can trust the brand. And that's why our members, our 8,000 odd members, end up getting business from various people, because we set a certain standard and consumers have recourse. If, for example, something goes wrong, something doesn't go well between you and a workshop, we have a team that deals with essentially being a marriage counselor to solve whatever might have gone wrong between the two of you.
It sounds to me like you like the SABS of the car industry.
A little bit like that.
South African Bureau of Standards. And, we need to have a conversation about the South African Bureau of Standards one day, folks. That organization is all but disappeared. But it sounds to me like you guys are the South African Bureau of Standards of the motor industry. Would that be fair?
Yeah, especially in the aftermarket, like I've said. So if you think about it, if we don't have standards, we don't know what good looks like. And we don't know how to protect people and consumers and to make sure your car is safe. And we also don't have a way within to separate those that are at a good level and those that are not. So to a large extent, I'd say it's a pretty good example. Yeah, SABS.
And you said to me that there are two sides to it. One is the side where you look after the employers. Would that include the manufacturers too?
No. So the manufacturers are looked after by a whole different association. We look after, like I've said, if you think about the small guys, the small workshop that you see that's got 8 to 10 employees, that's us. We're in every little city, everywhere across the country, but also some of the big guys, some of the listed firms, the Motuses, the AutoZones, and all of those are also our members as well.
And what do you do for them?
So what we do for them is a couple of things. One is in an environment where we know, earlier you spoke a little bit about our dear friend, Mr. Trump, that he sets policy in the US, tariffs that you would have seen, particularly for the auto sector, that make it difficult for the upstream, so the manufacturers to export.
Yeah.
We therefore, from an aftermarket perspective, need to think about what do we do to help the businesses, all those small businesses, remain in business.
Yep.
What policy guidance do we need to give to the DTIC, to the Department of Transport, on being able to save those jobs, and where possible, because the aftermarket is quite resilient, to grow the economy and to get people employed. So that's the trade aspects of it, and many other things. There's specialization. If you run a workshop, what software should you have to run your workshop? If you have HR issues, we have a team that helps with various HR issues, can run hearings for you and so forth.
So it's minimum standards for every aspect of that sector to give, I suppose, us, the consumers, a level of comfort that there are certain minimum standards that you will not go below, and therefore we can trust that this industry is giving us the best quality products and services based on those minimum standards?
Absolutely right. And it goes so far that we even have people who aren't part of the organization who replicate our logo and pretend that they are certified or are accredited by our standards. Of course, we do things to combat that. We do consumer awareness. Like, for example, you can go on our website, rmi.org, the Toyota ZA, and you can check if this company really is legitimate. The certificates we give out have a QR code. You can scan it. It takes you straight and checks if they really are legitimate. But yes, the standard setting is so good, and the company has been around for so long, 120 in a couple of years' time, that it's basically entrenched as the gold standard for what good should look like in the aftermarket.
And South Africans have really become accustomed to this. It's almost part of the transactional DNA of South Africans. If I go to a workshop and I'm taking my car in for a service, my car's old, so I don't have what do they call it?
Service plan, a maintenance plan.
No, I refuted it. I think.
Carl, yeah.
But I take comfort in going to a RMI accredited workshop. I sense and I know that these guys are going to give me a minimum standard that we can call acceptable. Where did the idea come from?
So,
And 120 years old?
So, yeah, very interesting story. When I joined the organization last year, Jan, as a CEO, I asked all the guys, most guys in the company have been there long, 30 years, 40 years. I said, guys,
that's depth, eh?
Yeah, it's good knowledge that we need to make sure that we retain in the organization. But I said, how 120 years? Please explain to the peoples. How did we get here?
What is this?
And they said, essentially back then when they were doing ox wagons, these guys sat and said, we need to find a standardized way of repairing these things and knowing what good's supposed to look like. So let's share some good practices and ideas. That's the one half. That's the trade part of the business.
Right.
And then
back in the ox wagon days.
Back then, which eventually, of course, evolved.
Sure.
As mobility evolved, it evolved into vehicles.
Right.
And then the other half of the business was around the 50s, where it was about trade and about labor. And they said, let's not compete with each other on low labor prices. If you're going to win a customer, let it be on your product is better or your service is better than mine, but let's not have a spiral wall to the bottom on price. So that's when they formed a labor part of the business. So it's essentially two businesses running in parallel, which then merged some 12, 13 years ago to become the RMI that you know today.
I imagine that created all sorts of amazing economies of scale. People could buy in bulk. They could then argue for better prices. All sorts of wonderful things that come with that kind of collaboration.
Absolutely. I mean, as an example, one of the pillars that we have, so we've got 8 sub-associations. One of them is called SAMBRA, which is South African Motor Body Repairers. So all your panel shops, the guys that, if you're in an accident, repair your car. If you think about them, there's between a rock and a hard place, right?
Like literally sometimes.
They literally, right? They, on the one hand, have to deal with insurers, which have huge power and size.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, for them to repair vehicles, they have to get approved by an OEM, like a Mercedes or Ford and so forth. Which means if they go with it alone, they're under immense pressure to just say be a price taker.
These are
for
big
example.
guys, yeah.
But together as an entire association, we can say, well, let's call one of the bigger insurers or sit in an insurer forum and say, there's issues. Yeah, we can't continue like this on price or this or quality or how long it takes for you to approve getting a car repaired or on parts and margins. So it does help to have that, let's call it our logo, together is better business.
That idea is just beautiful. I mean, I remember when you're a Pretoria boy, right?
Yeah.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in a place called Garangua.
Oh, Gogara.
Yeah, Gogara.
Garanga.
Close to Roslyn, yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, interestingly enough, for me to be in the auto sector, when I was in grade 11, my sister had a friend who was an engineer. And I said to my sister, man, I think I want to do engineering, but I'm not sure. So he was working for BMW in Roslyn in the plant. And he took me on a plant tour. And that's why I studied mechanical engineering. And then I did a bunch of other stuff, which we'll talk about. And then full circle, all these years later, I'm now back in the auto sector.
I want to go into that. But if you grew up in in Pretoria, you would have at some point have encountered Maravasta.
Yeah. Many a time.
Yeah, now I grew up in Maravasta.
Yeah.
My father used to go there to take me to go buy clothes, and I took on that tradition.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember uncle. Many people in Laudium will remember. Now I forget the name. Anyway, yeah, it's December's coming close.
You need to take that leave, man.
I do. But there was that kind of cooperation. So if you go to one shop and they can't find the thing that you need or the size of whatever thing you need, they'd say, no, don't go. Just stand here. We're going to find this thing. And they will go to all of the shops until somebody can find the thing. And if they can't find it, they'll tailor it so that it fits you.
Yeah.
And it was that kind of collaboration that I think made the Maravastat industry so powerful while it was so small. The Afrikaners have a saying that says, "Een drang mak." I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it properly, but it's the idea that if we come together and we work together, we can, the synergistic power of that is such that we start to punch above our weight, as it were. And it looks like that kind of mentality is the mentality that has made small groups of people very powerful. And is that what the RMI really represents in that space?
Absolutely. And I mean, I'll tell you a story. So the past 2 weeks we've been doing AGMs, right, where we essentially have, members come in and they elect because of an employer part, similar to, how a union would run. We have people get voted or elected in, right? Yeah. Those businesses. And in the course of that, you speak to the actual individuals, after the whole formal part. And when you speak to some of the black businesses, the new guys that have come in, one guy said to me, 7 years ago, I quit my job at a mine to open a workshop, and I really didn't think I was going to make it. There were many times when he had challenges, he got kicked out of the place he was renting, had to start all over. But because he had just joined the organization, he spoke to some old Afrikaans guy who said, if you survive your first 5 years in this business, you're going to thrive. And that guy went on to mentor him. It was actually a couple, and they were actually at that meeting as well. And he thanked them in front of me. And it's the notion that just because I'm a small business doing a very difficult thing, fixing cars, customers get angry, doesn't mean I'm alone. And I have the gift and the privilege of having people who've done it before, who can guide, who can teach, who can support. And I think that's such a powerful thing in the belonging, right? In the community part, because being an entrepreneur can be extremely lonely.
Yeah.
So this also gives you that as an organization.
And then there's the cross pollination of knowledge. I have a friend of mine. He is the CEO of a company called ASI Finance. His name is Mr. Govender, and they've got a fund that they've created with their own money. Anthony Govender, he is the CEO of a company called ASI, and they've created a fund with their own money for 300 million rands, where they are looking for the old founder of a small business, which has probably grown and has become significant, right?
Yeah.
But whose children don't want to take over that business because they've either moved to New Zealand or they're just not interested in a mechanical business.
Yeah.
They just, Dad, we're not interested. But if this guy doesn't find somebody to hand that business over to, that business is going to frizzle up and die.
Mm-hmm.
And so what these guys at ASI have come up with is this idea that they're going to find what they call searchers, young entrepreneurs, and they get them to meet and they create that kind of relationship, and then they finance it with their 300 million rand. And I think that's probably the one opportunity this country has to take up. And it seems to me like an RMI is a great opportunity or a great platform for that kind of bridging divides.
Absolutely. I mean, lately we've been applying our minds to could there be room for us to have a fund? You know, when you meet...
I gotta connect you with Anthony, man.
Exactly, yeah. When you meet to your point, some of the members who are in their 70s, their 80s, an old couple, generally we have, by the way, mom pop shops, husband and wife business, and they work quite well. I was talking to my wife about that, yeah. And to your point, sometimes they have no one to hand over the business to. And how do we create room for a transition? How do we create room for transformation in that kind of opportunity pipeline? As an example, people don't know, but a panel shop, like a big panel shop, pure equipment total, and there could be about 4 million rand. So it's not small numbers we're talking about.
Yeah, these are proper businesses.
Sophisticated, fancy spray booths, fancy machines, machines for being able to untwist your chassis to make it straight again. Yeah. So how do we find the ability to be able to connect the dots beyond what we do now, which is knowledge, mentorship, and so forth, and standards? But could we also be the conduit for creating that transformation that we want to see?
I worry that conversation is not taking place more loudly, more aggressively in the South African economy as to what do you do with the fact that you've got founders of businesses that have thrived, that have done well, but they don't have a succession plan. Many of them are entrepreneurial in nature.
Yeah.
Their children don't want to take over the business for many different reasons. I mean, you can sit with people and they'll tell you, look, my kids don't believe that they've got a future in South Africa, or
they don't want
to get dirty or whatever. But there's this business that employs people that if it dies, hell, bro, that's it.
Yeah. Run a huge risk.
So I'm loving the fact that there's a platform already that exists that has all of these businesses, and already, as you've described with the young entrepreneur who was thanking this family, and I think it'll do a lot for cohesion in this country and all of those kinds of things. But I want to take a quick call from Mariah in Rivonia. Hi, Mariah. Well, hold on, Mariah. I want Ipeleng to put on his ears, otherwise he's not going to be able to hear you. He's just putting on his ears. By the way, it's an open line, folks. We having a chat. We'd love for you to be part of the conversation. Mariah, hi. He's listening. Go ahead.
Hi, Aubrey. Nice to chat to you as always.
Indeed.
Thank you. Aubrey, just a comment you made just a while back in terms of collaboration and how, even though you are small, if you collaborate with others, you can be so much bigger than, the sum of your parts, so to speak. And it is so fundamentally true. My academic study, I've got a PhD, and it was on this theme of cluster studies, looking at the jewelry industry. But anyway, the theme was exactly that, how various examples over the world and also in South Africa. And one of the case studies that I did was, in fact, in KZN, looking at Indian jewelers and how they were all individual and basically competing with each other, but also collaborating. So if a customer were to go there and wanted something that particular didn't have, he would refer him to somebody else. And that is what made them so powerful. And powerful, in other words, as a cohesive entity. And it is that element of
cooperation between individuals that make a collective that is unstoppable, yeah?
Absolutely. And that has been proven time and again in various examples all over the world. So in terms of entrepreneurship, it is a very important factor that you are more than the sum of your parts.
All right. In Rivonia, yeah. Functional definition of synergy right there, yeah? What do you make of what she's saying?
If you think about it, within African culture, we've always had the idea of sharing, of
Communalism.
community, of sharing knowledge,
Yeah.
and of helping each other. And I think as an economy, given, our slow GDP growth, given the geopolitical pressures that we face, and as business and as leaders in business, we need to drive more of that. And I mean, it's so funny. It's not only within a business environment that you need to do that, but even, for example, between myself and other CEOs in the sector, we sit and say, "Gee, man, I'm having a tough time with this. What's your thoughts on this policy and that
Right.
and that?" Which then collectively can drive a bigger and better outcome and picture for the auto sector, but for the economy at large. I mean, as an example, the auto sector is about 5.6% of GDP. The automotive aftermarket is 2.1%, and it's minimum 2.1% because we're only talking about dealerships. We're not talking about all the other guys that you see every day, the workshops, the panel shops, the tire guys. And it's about how do we use that sheer scale, 300,000 jobs in the sector, in the automotive aftermarket, 22,000 businesses. How do we use that sheer scale and the ability to connect them to be able to drive this economy and solve the huge youth
How
unemployment
come
problem?
you guys aren't driving this more aggressively? I mean, I see so many upsides to that kind of cooperation, not just for the automotive industry, but for commerce in South Africa. Why are we not driving this kind of idea a little harder?
So it's an interesting question, and I think to a large extent the answer is we kind of are. And the RMI and the aftermarket, automotive aftermarket for a long time has not really been part of or included in the conversations for policy, which we're trying to change now. I mean, we've had some sessions with the DTIC and senior leadership, and it's about, there's something called the South African Automotive Master Plan, which is a plan that's supposed to end in 2035 to double jobs in the sector, to transform, to increase the number of vehicles that we make to about more than 1 million vehicles from the 600,000 that we make. But it's silent on the automotive aftermarket, and it's also silent on gender. So we are now in the process of at least we have good engagements at that level to say if we have a good policy framework, a framework that allows businesses to thrive, that removes red tape, that makes it, in certain countries like in Morocco, you have one-stop shop when you open a business. It's one window, you submit everything, you get your business and you're good to go. In South Africa, hugely complex. And it's things like that. How do we incentivize a workshop business to not buy a counterfeit part from China and sell it to you because you have an affordability problem, but instead find a way to incentivize the local manufacturer of that part to sell it to you as a workshop, so that that workshop in turn has got a good, let's call it price point to be comparable with the huge volumes that we get from China. So there is work that's beginning to happen. I mean, there's always work within our businesses, but now we're talking about policy and scale to drive that GDP contribution up.
Chinese are here, bro.
Say again?
I mean, Chinese products and cars are here, and they don't look like they're retreating.
No, it's quite an interesting fact, and let's call it a unintended consequence of policy and business. So there's something called the Automotive Development Production Program, which was designed to incentivize local manufacturing, to drive local content from the 30-odd something percent to 60% by 2035. And how it worked is there's a piece of policy that says for every car that you make locally, you will get a piece of paper that's a credit that has value. And for those credits, you can use that to import a vehicle to offset import tariffs.
Right.
Now, if you have what happened is unintentionally, some businesses had too many credits, too many of these pieces of paper. So you ended up selling them to people who don't make cars in South Africa, and then they can import their cars cheaply. So we've had an unintended consequence of subsidizing local or subsidizing imports of other vehicles. Of course, also the Chinese, as you might know, they have 100-year strategies. They don't think short term. So They are heavily subsidizing their own manufacturing. They have a huge market, 1 billion people plus. And with any excess, it's not like they're targeting South Africa. They're just, saying we've got excess vehicles at fantastic quality, by the way. And therefore, let's push them to all the markets we can.
What is that doing for the RMI agenda?
So, this is our point to the DTIC, that we are quite resilient from an aftermarket perspective to that, because we don't make cars, we repair them. Right? So it means our members need to learn how to repair, the Jators of the world and the JQs of the world. But that being said, that we could also be the cornerstone of resilience in an automotive sector that's inverted commas under attack, to be able to still preserve local jobs, to be able to still grow local jobs, and in so doing, be able to create an economy that allows for local job development. As an example, last year I was at a show called Automechanica, which is a global show for the automotive aftermarket in Frankfurt. And they were showing technology in the aftermarket for an electric vehicle. Instead of changing a battery, the whole battery of electric vehicle to replace is maybe 300,000, which is 40% of the car. But they show technology where you can remove the battery, change a module in the battery, repair one module, which is 20,000 Rand, 10,000 Rand, put it back, make sure all the voltages are correct, and put it back in the vehicle. And this is the future jobs, the future businesses that are to come, that we need to be ready
for. As EV becomes a reality.
Correct, right. Yeah. We need to be ready for, from a policy perspective, but also on the ground perspective.
Are you talking to the Chinese about becoming part of the RMI?
Not necessarily. I mean, we focus specifically on businesses that are in South Africa. So if they have a dealership in South Africa, they probably already are part of the RMI, like the BYDs of the world and such. If they have workshops in South Africa, they'll be part of the RMI. So we're not going to be, we're agnostic to.
Is it an active marketing of RMI's virtues to them?
Not necessarily, no.
Do they come to you?
Yeah, they do come to us, and it's more about, within the entire value chain and the aftermarket, how do we help the aftermarket to thrive and survive and so forth? If they happen to be part of the membership, then they don't necessarily drive the agenda. We have an entire.
What's your relationship with government?
Like I've said, now very good relationships have begun with the DTIC. What I've described, the sheer size, the number of jobs, the percentage to GDP contribution, are things that they were not really truly aware of or focused on until recently. And I think that now we'll start to see
what happened.
Some policy change.
Why did that change?
I think what changed is, to be honest, we as an organization said we need to be closer to government. We in an economy that looks like this, we can't sit on the sidelines and do nothing.
Yeah.
And two, that even from our membership base, they said, look, you help us quite well with all our day-to-day business stuff, but let's also talk about policy. So we're mandated by our 8,000 odd members to get involved now with policy.
Are you guys making money?
As a business, we are under the Labor Relations Act. We can't make money. we're not a non-profit, because that's in the Companies Act, but under the Labor Relations Act, an association isn't designed to make money. It's designed to create value for its members.
So how do you keep afloat?
So we have annual contributions from our members. You can imagine 8,000 members times a certain rand value that I will not disclose, but that in itself funds our staff. So we're a people-heavy business. We don't have assets per se. We're not a manufacturing business. We offer services, and that's essentially the business model. And in turn, for those membership fees, we do all sorts of services for them, and lately expanding that. Training is becoming a critical one. In the sector, there's a huge skill shortage of artisans, of mechanics, of spray painters, and yet at the same time we have a youth unemployment problem.
Yeah,
these two things cannot coexist, and it's quite a big passion.
Because I was going to ask you now, what's your relationship with the seaters?
Yeah.
And what's your relationship with the unions?
Yeah. So great question, actually. Let me start with the seaters. Very good relationships with Ms. Sita, which looks after, obviously, engineering, which is the sector we're in, with their CEO. He's also from Northwest, so, these things the dots are starting to connect. But with them, we've got 120 odd million in funding over the past.
From Brits, man.
He's not from Brits. He's from Where's he from?
I had him right there, sitting where you were sitting.
Did
the
you?
other
What,
day.
did you say
Yeah.
Brits?
Yeah.
It was a smaller thing outside of Brits, but yes.
Yeah.
I think Maboloka, if I recall.
Okay. Yeah.
So.
No, I'm thinking about the mining.
Yeah, no. This is the
No, yeah. But
So-
also the CEO. There's a
I must meet him. You see the Northwest guys. So
That's in the water there.
So something's clearly in the water. So this 120 million rand out of funding, we're using it to fund, for example, apprentices, to fund people who are already working in workshops, doing close to the work of an artisan, but not qualified artisans. So you sort of bridge that gap for them to become artisans. In June, we launched a project called Project Dineo, very cool project. We go to technical schools around the country. We got a bunch of high school kids in who are already doing technical stuff. We run a competition. The last part of the competition is, here's a car, it doesn't start, make it start. We like create faults intentionally. And then we take the top 10 from all of those schools, focusing on women as well, girls as well. And we fund them for training at TVET colleges with Mesita's funding for apprentices. And then through Harambe, SA Youth, which is part of the presidency, link them to work. There's nothing worse than going to school, and it happens a lot in this country.
Sure.
And not finding the work.
Yeah.
Right? So because we've chosen top talent, we're doing 100 of these young people a year. We connect them with, 8,000 odd members. And what Harambe does, I'm not sure if you should get them on the show sometime. They're like a Tinder for jobs for young people under 35. So we essentially use their platform to be able to join all these young people, to all of these employers who are hungry for talent. And it's just some of the small stuff that we're starting to do in response to not only the needs of our members, but bigger societal challenges that we see in the country.
The unions?
The unions, so there are, in our part of the world, there are two unions. There's NUMSA and there's MISA. MISA is very, very auto sector specific. NUMSA, as you know, is multi-sectoral. And we have, in the past, we didn't have great relationships, in particular with NUMSA. And part of my mandate when I was brought in was bridge this gap. Just because we're on opposite sides of the table does not mean that we shouldn't find common ground, especially when we're talking about jobs on the line, wages, and so forth. And somebody asked me, so how did you bridge the gap with unions? Unions can be quite hectic, right?
Yeah.
And I said, have coffee.
Coffee's good.
Have lunch, have dinner, get to know people on a more personal level.
Yeah.
So that, and that's how some of my
develop
values,
relationships.
So that when things do become intense, you know that we're not at war. We're dealing with the subject itself, but you and I personally are not at war. And I think that's why we've had, for the first time, negotiations finished in record time, finished before the current wage deal expires, which means all of those workers have the opportunity to have their salary increases before the wage deal expires. And it's important that we do that. It gives stability and predictability also for employers, so that they can go onto the business of working instead of worrying about how much should I pay employees and so forth. Let the unions, ourselves, the Employers Association and the unions, deal with that and deal with it efficiently.
I think many of the game-changing opportunities in South Africa are hinged on that.
Yeah.
On us being able to just start relationships. Understanding that we're not always going to agree. But if I understand Ipeleng is a man, is a human being.
Yeah.
And he has got certain priorities in life. If we have a relationship, we can talk not as organizations, but as two men.
Absolutely.
And find real solutions. You were going to tell me about your discovery of engineering. You're an engineer, right?
I'm a mechanical engineer, actually.
Yeah.
I went to Wits, so here in Joburg. And I guess, when you grow up in Garangu, you wake up at 4:30 every day from grade 1, you take the bus to Pretoria to go to school, to Queenswood, to Clapham.
You went to Clapham?
Yeah,
My brother went to Clapham.
There we go. Small world. My one friend who went to Boys High said, how did you make it out of Clapham, yo? And I said to him, it was a good school, man. Don't
Pretoria people will understand that joke.
Yeah. So, growing up like
Great
that,
school.
good exposure to certain things. My parents are both high school principals, so discipline and education was everything. My mother is a reverend officially by title, by training as well, So that brought a lot of structure and discipline, I guess, in life. But also growing up, seeing the guys go kasi and seeing some of them succeed and some of them not succeed will also push you and make you a lot tougher. And then high school, essentially just briefly was, I don't want to study. You do an aptitude test and it says do whatever you want.
Yeah.
It doesn't tell you, it just tells you you're fairly good at a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And I liked engineering because it was interesting, it was challenging. You have to create things. It was broad.
Do you find that in your job you use the skills that you learned in that discipline?
Absolutely.
Right. Okay.
I posit that engineers probably make great executives and great leaders because when you look at a problem, you look at the sum of its parts.
Right.
In engineering, you have to create a big formula to make sure a car can move. Yeah. So you look at the sum of the parts. The same is true with business. The same is true with interpersonal relationships. If you understand the sum of the parts and you can solve the individual problems, then the sum of the whole becomes, solved as well. And I think you use all of that critical inquiry skills, the ability to analyze information and data quite strongly as an exec. So it helps me significantly. I'd say more than the business school course.
Yeah, I find that people that are trained in the sort of empirical studies tend to be, I'm going to get into trouble, tend to be better appliers of principles that are not necessarily in the business of what they studied for.
Absolutely, yeah.
Do you think that has to do with perhaps doing a lot of conceptual work?
It does. So engineering teaches you to imagine stuff that you can't see. I mean, you can't see electrons.
Right.
You can't physically look into a car engine the whole time, right? So your ability to sort of do chess in your head.
Right.
If I say this, then you do that.
Right.
I mean, as an example, in wage negotiations, when things get tense, my question would be, what problem are you trying to solve?
Right.
What is your actual fear in signing the deal as is? And once you're able to distill that, we can say, then we can maybe fix something a little bit off center here, but it'll fix your fear. And it is still a good compromise point for us as employers. So I think the skill set that you get helps you to really be able to navigate complex problems that have got nothing to do with engineering.
What's your biggest joy?
My biggest joy is my family. I've got my lovely wife and 2 sons. I was telling the producer, my one son is 9 weeks old now.
Oh, beautiful.
And the other one's 2.
Wow.
They give me a lot of joy, a lot of fun, and a lot of lessons as well. As a new father, you learn about yourself. You learn to be patient. You see things like that's my bad character trait showing there.
see it live.
Exactly. Yeah. And that gives me a lot of joy. And secondly, it's the ability to teach. So my team knows that my style of leadership is teach. Okay, let's sit down. How would you address this issue?
Yeah.
And then
you engineer the thing.
Yeah.
You reverse engineer.
And try to get them to sort of have an appreciation for that kind of approach and thinking.
What keeps you up at night? What worries you?
What worries me is, will my kids have a country left in 18, 25 years time? Are we making, as business leaders, as political leaders, as the everyday citizen, are we making the right choices day to day to make sure that they thrive? I don't want them to leave the country.
Yeah.
I've worked abroad, and South Africa's nice, guys.
Yeah. We miss that as South Africans, eh?
Yeah, South Africa's, I've worked in Europe, I've worked in Dubai, and I prefer to be here.
Right.
And I want my kids to be able to have one better childhood than what I had, growing up in a township and all that. But 2, to also be able to have the opportunities to thrive, to be safe, all the basic needs that any human needs.
What are you reading?
What am I reading? Lately, my wife teases me. She reads all the hardcore books, all the business books and all that, and then she tells me, then I say I've read the book through her. And then I read actually novels,
Right.
mainly African literature novels.
Right.
The last book I read was called The Secret Lives of Babaseki's Wives. Yeah, so completely nothing to do with
Business and formality and so forth.
and it's important as part of my shutdown routine at
Right.
night to read something very, very remote, relaxing.
Chebizia Talogan.
Exactly.
I have thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. In fact, I haven't had such a good conversation in a long time.
No,
I've
thanks, bro.
thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. How do people get in touch with you if they want to talk to you and maybe reflect on some of the things that they've heard you talk about tonight?
No, excellent. I mean, we have our website, rmi.org, ZA. You can reach me at my email address, ipeleng.mabusela@rmi.org.za. And I mean, from there, we can connect and see how we can work together.
Ipeleng Mabusela, CEO of the retail motor industry. It's been a privilege talking to you, my brother. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much, bro. I appreciate it.
It is.